In our last lecture of this course series, Abhidharma Essentials, let us first have a quick review of what we have learned together from the 8 chapters of this treatise, of this Abhidharma Kusha Bhashya by Vasubandhu, before we have some final notes and advice from Vasubandhu. Well, as the first thing that we have come across together is the contents and correlations, the interrelations of these 8 chapters. The first 2 chapters we have discussed about the dhatus and the faculties that have explained the entities and the functions of dhammas, and we can say that they form a basis for the understanding of the remaining 6 chapters. And from chapter 3, the world, and then chapter 4, the karma, and chapter 5, the contaminants, they mainly explain to us how this world of samsara, what is it, how does it look like, and what does it include in sentient beings and the receptacle world, and how are they formed? Well, they come from our karma, the actions, which is the impure causes for this impure world, and then what is the driving force for our actions? That's our defilements, the contaminants, as explained in chapter 5. And in order to abandon these contaminants, in order to give an end, to put an end to this world, to this world of samsara, we need the noble path, and we need to cultivate the pure factors, especially the pure factors, because we really need the pure factors to be able to penetrate into the noble path, to become a noble being. And in order to do that, we need cognitions. That's the direct antidote to defilements. To arise cognitions, we need samapatis. Well, cognitions depend on samapatis. If we abandon defilements through a mundane path, we will need the mundane cognitions. And yes, we need the impure samapatis. And if we abandon defilements through the pure cognitions, then that will depend on pure samapatis. So from chapter 6 to chapter 8, it's more focused on the pure dhammas. And here we can see there are twofold cause and effect. From chapter 3 to chapter 5, that's the cause and effect of this samsara. And from chapter 6 to chapter 8, that is the cause and effect for termination of samsara. In chapter 1, we have understood the difference between these terminologies: conditioned, unconditioned factors, and pure and impure factors. Now we know the difference. For conditioned factors, they arise, they cease, they're impermanent. And if a factor is not like that, we call it an unconditioned factor. And pure and impure, a factor, if it can increase our defilements, we call it an impure factor. Otherwise, it is pure. And from this illustration, we clearly see the range of different terminologies. All dhammas, obviously, that's everything, and includes impure and pure. And the impure dhammas correspond to the first 2 noble truths, that is the truth of suffering and the truth of the origin. And then plus the truth of past, we will have the conditioned factors, which are also the 5 aggregates. And then the truth of the past, we need to be aware that although it is a condition, although they include conditioned factors, they are pure. They are pure dhammas, because they don't increase our defilements. Rather, they are antidotes. They counteract our defilements. So this truth of past plus space plus the two cessations, these are pure factors. And the space and the two cessations, these three are unconditioned factors. So from this illustration, we know clearly that all dhammas, and then with a smaller scope, we have the Four Noble Truths, and then minus the truths of cessation, we will have the conditioned factors, and then minus the truths of the past, we will have the impure aggregates, the 5 aggregates of clinging. So now we are very clear and we understand these different ranges of dhammas in a better way. From this illustration, we have a corresponding relationship between the 5 skandhas, 12 ayatanas, and 18 dhatus. And we now know that the 5 skandhas, they do not include the 3 unconditioned factors, while the 12 ayatanas or 18 dhatus, they include all dhammas, all factors. And also we can categorize these all factors, which in this treatise, in this Abhidhamma Kusha Bhasyan, they have listed the 75 factors are included, which represent all dhammas in the world, and they are categorized into five. The rupa, which is the material, and the mind, and the mental events, and then elements dissociated from the mind. We can also call them dissociated factors, and also then plus the 3 unconditioned. So we are now in a good understanding of all of them. Among them, the formations, the aggregate formations, have, or we can say, the Dhammadhatu, which include the aggregate formations, plus the Avijnapti, which is the unmanifest, and then plus the sensation and conception, the other 2 aggregates, and then plus the 3 unconditioned, which is the Dhammadhatu. They have the most factors. If I remember correctly, the Dhammadhatu has 64 factors, while we have 75 in total. And we also now know some important concepts which we might encounter during our reading of the text of Buddhism, like visible and invisible, resistant and non-resistant, or the 3 moral natures of good or bad or non-defined. And then we also now know the initial inquiry and investigation, the vitaka, vichara. We can understand the difference between the effect of retribution or of accumulation or of a uniform outflow. And then we also know defilements that are to be abandoned by the passive vision or by the passive cultivation, or factors that are not to be abandoned, for instance, those pure factors. In the chapter 2, we have learned about these controlling faculties. We have established 22. Among them, 14 belong to Dhammadhatu and 8 are connected to sense or mental faculties. So these 22 controlling faculties, their properties, and how are they pure or impure? What are their functions? We have learned on these topics. And we can also correlate these 22 faculties with the 18 dhatus, so we know how they are interrelated. And about the faculties, we now know whether they are pure or impure, are they good, bad, or non-defined, are they being retribution or are they not, are they having retribution or without. So we now know the difference. Being retribution means they are retributive effect, they are totally non-defined factors, while having retribution means they can be the retributive cause. They can give rise to the retributive effect. So we now know the difference. And how are they distributed in the 3 realms? And which types of sentient beings can have the minimum or maximum number of faculties? We have discussed on these topics. Also good to know about the origination of a material or the production of the mind and the mental events, because we need to be aware of the major principle when it comes to mind and mental events. are that they're like a king and those following ministers and the king and the people. So they come and go, they rise at the same time. They are associated. In fact, they are called the associated cause. And also, we now know about the different categories of the permeating mental factors. But generally, we have 10, the good. I think we also have 10, and the defiled, 6, and the bad permeating mental factors. There are 2. Yes, they are 2. And then the mental faculties with small defilements. Also, we have 10, and indeterminate mental faculties. I think we have 8. So altogether, that's 46. And then we have dharmas dissociated from the mind. We have 14 of them, from possession all the way to syllabus. So these are not associated with our mind and mental events. So, and we also learned the 6 causes, 5 effects, and 4 conditions. While the 6 causes are established by Sarvastivada, by their school, and in the sutra, it is more often to use the terms the 4 conditions. And then we now also know the correlation or the interrelation between the 6 causes or the 4 conditions with the corresponding 5 effects. And in chapter 3, we have learned more about the world, including the sentient beings and also the receptacle world. When it comes to sentient beings, we now know these different places, like there's 20 places in Kamadhatu, 17 places or in Arupa Dhatu, and also the 4 places in Arupya Dhatu. And we have learned about the 5 destinies. So we have the Deva, the human, the animals, the hungry ghost, and also the hell beings. And then 4 modes of birth. Well, they can be births from wombs, birth from eggs, or birth from moisture, and also we have apparitional births. And we now know that different destinies have different modes of birth. And apart from the 5 destinies, it is important to know that there are also intermediate beings. There are bardos, they're actually everywhere. They are waiting to be reborn. They are on their way to their next destiny. And we have learned their properties, what kind of abilities they have, and so on. So then a very important topic in chapter 3 we have learned together is about the dependent origination. Now we know that this dependent origination has 12 branches and can be categorized into 3 types, and they are defilements, their actions, and effects. So the ignorance and the craving so we have 3 defilements and 2 actions. The 2 actions. So the logic chain is that, as you can see here, it is actually a closed loop, and because of that, we say this samsara. It has a closed loop mechanism, which makes it really difficult and tricky to get rid of. And the most tricky part is the defilements, because defilements can produce defilements, while the effects can again produce defilements. So with the existence of defilements, the loop keeps running and the samsara keeps going. That's why we all need to pay special attention to defilements. Like we sometimes say that there are many different schools in Buddhism, but they have one share. They have a common priority for all of them, and that is to how to abandon defilements. What can we do with defilements, right? They have different ways to do with defilements. For instance, for Hinayana, they treat defilements as most of them. They treat defilements, especially Sarvastivada. They think they are real entities. They are number 1 enemies, so they have to be destroyed. And if we go to Mahayana, for instance, the Madhyamaka, well, defilements they're empty. So what we need to do is to see through them, to see through their emptiness, just like we see through ourselves. We are also empty. And if we talk from the perspective of school of like Zen or Chanzong in China, or Zen, that's the Western way of saying it, or the diamond school. Well, we might say that the defilements, they are also Buddha nature. There's really no need. We shouldn't and we actually couldn't abandon them. This is not something we can actually abandon. We can realize their Buddha nature. So there are different ways there are different views to look into defilements, and of course, correspondingly, there are different ways to deal with them. So this is about dependent origination, the twofold cause and effects, from the past cause to the present effect, and from present cause to the future effect. So it's 3 lives, twofold. And also in chapter 3, we have learned about the receptacle world. We now know that we have circles of the water, the wind, and so on. And the wind first, and then the water, and then the golden layer. Then we have mountains, oceans, continents, where we are now in a southern continent that is called Jambudvipa, right? And then we also have different dwelling places for hells, all the way for the gods. And we now know what a trichilicism consists of. It actually consists of 1 billion small worlds. And we also know the different body heights or life expectancies of different sentient beings, the units for space and time, and we now have an idea about the great kalpa, especially the 4 stages, right, from the appearance and then to the stage where it can remain, and also the destruction kalpa, and then in the end is the empty, or it will be destroyed. And we also learned the appearance of Buddhas, Pacceka Buddhas, and Cakkavatti kings. They actually come to the world at different time points, with different requirements, actually. And in chapter 4, which is a very important chapter because it talks directly on karma, on our actions, on actions of all sentient beings, that is the direct cause for samsara, for the world. And we know that actions can be volitional, which is the mental karma. It can also be bodily or vocal actions, and each type can be informative and uninformative. So we know the difference between informative and non-informative, right? And then non-informative mainly refers to those disciplines or indisciplines, or neither discipline nor non-disciplines. So how do these discipline or indiscipline or neither nor, how are they acquired, and how can they be abandoned? We have talked about these, and also about the actions of different nature, the good and bad and non-defined actions, which is also related to their retributive effects. We have also talked about the meritorious, demeritorious, and immovable actions. And we should be really, really aware. We should be very careful when we do some meritorious actions here in the realm of desire. Then we must make sure that we don't vow stupidly. We should dedicate the merit towards the right direction, not just as those stories, right? Do you still remember the stories of the hungry ghost, for example, or the Brahmin? They had very stupid vows, so their meritorious actions actually the pleasant effects have been twisted because of the vows. So immovable actions are mainly those meditations. If you cultivate, if you practice dhyana meditation, for example, and then when this being dies, he will be reborn in the next life into the corresponding dhyana heaven. And then we have retributive actions, determined or undetermined. For determined, it can be for determined actions, their effect can ripen in this life, or maybe in the next, or maybe in the future life, depending on the strength of that action. And when it comes to the 10 bad passive action, this is commonly valued, and it's commonly discussed in all schools of Buddhism, because these are those we should really try to avoid. 3 of them related to body, 4 of them related to our speech, and 3 of them related to our mind. And one of them, the false views, which are related to our mind, that is very dangerous, because if it is the negation type, which is seriously, and it can seriously developed, it can cut off our good roots. If our good roots are cut off, that means the cultivation of the past will be stopped, and we will also have big problem when it comes to cultivation of the past, or to all the way to liberation. It is not possible to continue. However, there are ways to realize our good roots by reasonable doubt or by the right view. And then we have also learned projecting the feeling actions, the three abstractions, well, the karmic, the afflictive, as well as the retributive, three abstractions. And then the 5 anataya karma, which are probably the most serious bad actions, like killing one's parents, killing arhat, or causing the Buddha to bleed with an evil with an evil thought, and also the season, causing season to a sangha. And we have differentiated 2 types of sangha. The season of the sangha, that is anataya karma, will not happen nowadays. But however, we should still be careful not to cause any kind of season among sanghas. Now we also know how Shakyamuni Buddha has completed his Buddhahood and how he accumulated the required merit and wisdom across the 3 Asamkhya kalpas. In the end of the chapter 4, we have talked about the 3 types of meritorious work, which are giving, morality, and cultivation, which are all of them are very important to us. In chapter 5, we have talked about the contaminants, different defilements, because now we know that the root of existence, the root of our world, is defilements. From them, we have different actions, and from the actions, the world is manifested. So there are different categories. We can categorize into 6 or 7 or 10 fundamental contaminants. That is, if we say 10, so they are greed, hostility, ignorance, pride, and doubt, plus the 5 erroneous views. And if we further divide them into upon the 3 realms and upon the 4 noble truths, we are going to have 98 contaminants in total. 88 of them are to be abandoned by the passive vision, and 10 of them are to be abandoned by the passive cultivation. So this is the illustration I believe you have learned and understood. And then we have also gone through the 4 mistaken views, which can actually be cured by the 4 mindfulness by the 4 applications of mindfulness. And then we have these 7 types of pride. Well, it is really interesting to see or reflect on ourselves. Which kind of pride do we have? It is very sometimes it is very tricky, very how to say. These are, of course, bad factors we should try to avoid. And then the 3 bad roots. That's the source of all bad factors, especially here in the realm of desire. And then we have these 5 hindrances that prevents us from, especially preventing us from getting rid of this kamadhatu. And then the 5 lower, 5 higher fetters. They are mainly established for the ordinary beings and for noble beings, respectively. Just as very good reminders for us to be aware of them, to pay attention to them. And then in chapter 5, we have also learned on Substivadan's view on all-time existence. It is one of their core doctrines, and so it is good to understand their view, although we don't have to agree. It's always a good starting point to gradually cultivate our own right views step by step, until one day we can cultivate the right views from Madhyamaka and so on. The causes for contaminants to rise, this is also very insightful for us. Then we know that, okay, we have defilements not abandoned yet. They are seeds, they can, they're also like hidden bombs, right? And then we have these objects in our daily life. We also have bad or wrong intentions. So if we want to stay away from defilements, maybe for now, before we can abandon them really, or especially with pure power, which we're not capable of for now, we can at least try to stay away from some objects, or at least we can try to practice our good intentions instead of the bad ones. About the subsidiary defilements, we have also learned the 10 wrappings plus the 6 stains. They are relatively less. They have less strength, but they can also be of a big influence. They can also be having a big influence to us. And I believe we have explained the tiny differences. And about the abandonment of defilements, we now know that those to be abandoned by the passive vision and to be abandoned by the passive cultivation, they have different mechanisms. And what can we get? What kind of fruit will be attained after the defilements are abandoned? So we have these 9 complete knowledges, and only the perfected beings can have one integrated knowledge, which include all of them. In chapter 6, we have learned the past and different noble beings, and it is especially important to now have an understanding on the past prior to being a noble, and while one has become a noble being. As long as one has not abandoned all defilements, it is always important to keep cultivating along the path of cultivation. So we have meditation and calm abiding, the 2 doors of entry, meditation on the losum and mindfulness of the breathing and so on. And also meditation on insight, it includes the 4 applications of mindfulness and the 4 roots of good, from heat to summit and the receptivity, and then in the last, the supreme mundane dharma, which is the last impure moment before penetration into the direct realization of the noble truth. So we have these stages: conductive to liberation and conductive to penetration. Then we have 4 pairs of noble ones, 4 approaches and 4 fruits. While the fruit of the perfected being for Sravakayana, that is Arhat, and the perfected being, or the fruit of perfected being in Mahayana, then we talk about the Buddhas or Buddhahood. And before one becomes a perfected being, we would say that those noble beings are in training, and only the perfected noble ones, they are beyond training. We have also learned the 4 noble truths of suffering, the origin, cessation of the past, and the steps towards direct realization. Where do we start? Well, we start by qualifying ourselves as a practitioner. The 2 withdrawals, being content with little desires, and also to stay consistent with the 4 families of the noble persons. And then about the meditation on calm abiding, the 2 doors of entry, and then meditation on insight as well, the 4 applications of mindfulness, 4 roots of good. And then after all of these, right after the supreme mundane factor, will come the 60 moments of direct realization, which is miracle, which is really a miracle for a sentient being, because that is the boundary, that is the moment for a sentient being to switch from an ordinary being to a noble one. So it is really of significance, huge significance. In chapter 6, we have also learned on practitioners who jump over fruits and those who proceed successively. And depending on which categories of defilements they have abandoned before the penetration, and if they haven't abandoned any, they just proceed gradually. So there are different cases. We have learned about the max 7 rebirths for those stream enterer and 7 types of non-returner, depending on which route they are going through before they become perfected beings, and also the approacher and fruit of the perfected being, the 9 perfected beings with Buddha as the top, with strong faculty. We have actually 7 different types of arhats, and we also have 7 noble ones, depending with different criteria. And we have criteria to judge if a noble being has complete or incomplete for those in training or beyond training. And then in the end of the chapter 6, we have learned the 37 factors conducive to enlightenment, which are highly valued by all schools. Yes. And in chapter 7, we have learned the cognitions, because we know we need them to really abandon defilements. So we have learned the 10 types of cognition. We also know the difference between cognition, receptivity, and vision. And we also learned the qualities constituted by the cognitions, especially those unshared qualities, the 18 unique factors that exclusively belong to the Buddha, the 10 powers all the way to the great compassion. We know what they mean specifically. And also there are some shared qualities with the noble listeners, like the concentration of being without conflict, cognition resulting from a resolve, and also the four unhindered knowledges. These are shared qualities with the noble ones. And also there are shared qualities with both noble ones and ordinary beings. That is the 6 supernormal knowledges we talk about. Except the last one about, on the exhaustion of all defilement. That is not shared with ordinary beings. And in chapter 8 about the Samapatis, we have learned the 8 fundamental Samapatis, which are the 4 dhyanas plus 4 arupyas. And we now know that these Samapatis could be clean, could be defiled, and could also be pure. And we now know how they can be acquired and how they can reciprocally generate each other. Of course, we now know the difference between the terminology concentration, meditation, and meditative attainments. In Sanskrit, we know them as samadhi, dhyana, and samapatti. So we have also learned the preliminary concentration and the intermediate meditation, and we now know which samapatis really are capable of destroying those defilements, and as well as how these samapatis could arise through which types of power, and what is the circumstances when it comes to different realms. In Kamadhatu, the Rupa Dhatu, Arupa Dhatu, they can arise through different power. So that's the main contents, the main topics we have covered together in the 8 chapters of this treatise. Later we will continue with some concluding remarks before we complete this course series. There are some concluding remarks from Vasubandhu, which are actually also very important and very insightful. And let's talk about them later.